welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are here on Generally Irritable for a very interesting conversation, one that I'm actually pretty excited about. I don't know if you guys were paying attention with all of the craziness over the last couple of weeks between, the assassination attempt, Biden dropping out of the race. One thing that has kind of been sticking in my craw and bothering me was the reaction to Harmy Dillon, California RNC committee woman, doing a prayer, a Sikh prayer to God at the RNC. People have been absolutely pearl clutching and hyperventilating. Oh my God, there was a prayer to a demon at the RNC. Okay, just absolutely outrageous. So now apparently our national committee women are just praying to demons on the stage. Okay. Now here's the thing. Let's say I even agreed with that assessment of what happened. Let's just say that I did. What do you think it means? What do you think religious liberty means? Do you remember that this country was actually founded on religious liberty, religious persecution? The Pilgrims came here escaping religious persecution. They wanted to worship their God the way that they saw fit without persecution from the state. So they fled. And now embedded in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, in the Declaration of Independence itself, we are endowed by our Creator. Now, does it say Yahweh? Does it say Jesus? No, it says our Creator. And now I know we can get into whether or not they were deists or theists or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I still believe that you have the right to practice whatever religion you want, as long as you're not running around murdering and killing people. Okay. If your religion includes like sacrificing people, I'm not really with that. Okay. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not really with that. But what I want more than anything is to win elections. I want to win elections, and I want to put people in office who are sane and make good decisions and have critical thinking skills where they consider second and third order effects. And what I'm really concerned about is that all of this insistence that the Republican Party be owned by Christians, by Judeo-Christians in this country, is problematic, because I don't know if you guys know this, but we can't win elections with just Republicans. We can't win elections with just Christians. We actually need the independents. We need atheists, agnostics. We need everyone to be willing to consider conservative values, principles, and ideas. And I can tell you firsthand, and I think one of our guests can tell you, that being an unreligious person or a religious minority in the Republican Party or as a conservative is absolutely annoying. So I don't want to keep talking, you guys, because I think we're going to have a really good conversation. I've got John from Ruin of the Gods, Bruce Abramson, and Jay the Shepard joining me this evening. All right, fellas, thank you all for coming on.
Thank you, Ericka.
Hello. Okay, so we're gonna go around. The square here. I want to give each of you, a couple of minutes, or about a minute to introduce yourself to the audience and let people know why you care about this topic. Bruce, why don't we start with you?
Sure. All right. My name is Bruce Abramson. I'm here as the Jewish speaker. I am what you would probably call a semi-observant Orthodox Jew. What that means is, philosophically, I tend to believe that Judaism is as it's derived to be. The Torah is what it is. Jewish tradition is what it is. But individuals, particularly individual Americans, have a right to do what they want. So I've spent a long time thinking about what it means to belong to a minority faith. I've also just written a book called American Spirit or Great Awakening, where I ask the question whether wokeism is a religion. And I talk about my view of what the religious platform America was founded to have. And it turns out that when you start asking whether wokeism is a religion, you have to back it up and ask what a religion is. And that's a tougher question than people might like to think.
All right, Jay, how about you?
I'm Jay Shepard. I'm actually a former vice chairman of the Republican National Committee. I am no longer on the Republican National Committee as of last Friday. My term ended, and I didn't seek re-election. My true belief is that I am a conservative, and that conservatism means believing in the Constitution as it was written and how it was designed to make America great. So I believe when we sit down, we talk about the First Amendment. We're really talking about religious liberty first and foremost that made this country great.
I love it. I love it. All right, John.
Hi. So I'm a volunteer and staff member at Atheists for Liberty. I am not Thomas Sheedy. I'm not the president. I did not found the organization, so sorry to disappoint.
No, it's great. Thomas had you come on because he's at a thing in DC. So thanks for taking the time, John.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm an engineer by trade. I'm a military veteran. I'm a patriot and a lover of liberty. I believe that the cause of liberty is justifiable by reason and does not require any particular faith or creed to justify it. I think that reason is a language that transcends creeds, and that it is something that it is a common tongue that anyone can speak if they're willing to abide by principles of thought.
All right. I like it. And that's what, a lot of people that I've met, like at the Atlas Society and various organizations, we can say that our creator, like if you aren't a believer in a God, that nature is our creator or whatever it is, that I don't need to believe in a specific theist God in order to believe that I have inalienable rights. Can you talk about that a little bit, John?
Oh yeah, I think that similar to Locke, I think that the root of our natural liberty is to be found in the necessity of the pursuit of happiness, because I think that because the telos of a human life is to flourish and to live as well as we can, it certainly would behoove us to be free whilst we do so. I mean, ultimately, happiness is not something that you can give people. I fundamentally reject the utilitarian moral philosophy, which seeks to distribute packets of happiness to people as if it was something that you could simply give people. I think that happiness is something fundamentally self-realized, self-actualized. You have to discover it for yourself. And the only means by which you can do so is if your mind is free.
Okay. And that's what I wanted to just make sure that, like, because I've never been an atheist. So that's why I'm like, I want to know what your framework is as we get started so that I can kind of like understand like where you're coming from with
I would say that I'm fundamentally a eudaimonist, very much like Aristotle. I'd say I'm definitely in the Aristotelian tradition.
Okay.
I believe that ultimately the point of life is to live as meaningfully and as to pursue the most fulfilling kind of life available to us. A life, in John Locke's words, fit for the dignity of man.
All right. So excellent. All right, you guys. So just so you know, as we're going through this, if you guys want me to pull up any videos or show any websites or anything like that, I can easily do it. But I mean, this was the thing. When I was looking through, it was like, oh my God, a ACEK prayer. Oh my God. And then when I looked up like some of the Christians that I watch on YouTube. Hold on, is it gonna bring it up? Hold on, let me bring it up. It's like, I'll have to bring it up. But I'm looking at these things and I'm going, but why though? Like, why are people so mad? And if we say, okay, so for the three of us that subscribe to Judeo-Christian values, if we want to try to defend that we're not trying to have a Christian, we're not Christian nationalists, isn't this kind of rhetoric kind of defeating? Jay, do you want to speak?
Let me jump in a little bit, just for some disclaimer on this. Harmeet Dillon is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other And
And mine.
Bruce, in 2016, we both did prayers at the National Convention.
Hmm.
And that was, we did invocations, which opened up sessions.
What is it?
The
What does invocation mean?
invocation is an opening prayer at a
Like a
meeting or at
blessing?
an event. And then there's a benediction. And what we're really talking about here is Harmeet did a benediction at the 2024 convention, whereas
Okay.
I did an invocation to open sessions at the 16 and 20 conventions.
Okay, can you explain to our viewers what's the difference between invocation and benediction? Is it a different kind of prayer? Or does it happen at a different
It's very
time?
very similar in nature. It's thanking God for the blessings that we have.
Okay.
And invocation is at the beginning of something, and a benediction is at the end of something.
Okay, so it's like saying grace before you eat. For the layman, if we want to make an explanation for people who are not as super Christian as you are.
It really comes down to thanking God
Okay.
for what we're having, what we're doing, and the people that are there and involved in it.
Okay. And is there normally any other kinds of religions that get to pray? Are there any other people who can pray?
As a matter of fact, in most cases, and if you go back and you look at earlier conventions that I was involved in, every major religion is represented, some more than others. There's some decisions made by the RNC or by the candidate who is the nominee, who gets to speak, and when they get to speak, and their prominence in it. So
Okay.
I think if you look back at the invocations that were done in the 5 sessions of the RNC this time, you'll find that they were done by a variety of different faiths. And as a matter of fact, just prior to Harmeet doing her benediction, there was a benediction done by a Lutheran priest.
Well, that's still Christian. To me, anybody that is Christian adjacent is the same thing. Is that unfair?
That's ignorant, but that's fair.
I mean, is it though? If we all follow Jesus, it's all Christian.
It depends on the degree of similitude that's considered acceptable.
I suspect that most Lutherans would balk at being considered Christian adjacent.
Do they follow Jesus?
No, they're real Christians. They're not Catholics, but they're real Christians.
Oh my God. And this is the whole thing is now we're having who's a real Christian?
And
So
and what does it even mean?
If I believe in, the Old Testament and a lot of what's in there, does that make me Jewish?
No, it makes you Christian still. Although there are messianic. Okay, we're getting down a rabbit trail we don't need to get down.
Messianic Jews
So-
are Christians.
Yes. Well, and
It seems to me that the definition of a Christian is believing in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and believing that His blood washes away our sins.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yo, bro, it's all the same. Okay. And maybe that's because I'm not a denomination that I'm insensitive about it. But here's the thing. See, that's even coming from me as a believer, being in these circumstances. And sometimes I'm even made to feel uncomfortable because I'm aware of the people in the room who are not believers. And a lot of times what I see is the rhetoric used is under the assumption that you are a Christian if you are at an event like that. John, have you experienced that?
Well, yes, to an extent. I was involved pretty heavily in TPUSA, students for TPUSA, Students for Individual Liberty, Young Americans for Freedom, and one other org that I can't seem to remember. But the one thing that's really interesting to me is that TPUSA and also the College Republicans. Thing about the College Republicans, and actually the thing that actually kind of convinced me to leave the College Republicans was the overtly religious rhetoric of Nick Freitas when he was invited to speak there. Nick Freitas is interesting to me because while I really like a lot of his politics, he now he's running the rounds on YouTube, talking about why we need to be creationists. And, it's kind of, I don't know. I don't think that mixing anti-science and pseudoscience with your politics is very good. But regardless, and I'm not saying that with malice towards the man, by the way. I actually think that he means well. But it was the overwhelming support amongst the college Republicans for Nick Freitas's Christian conservative ideology, and this notion that you have to embrace a sort of Judeo-Christian tradition, which doesn't really exist. There's no such thing as Judeo-Christianity. There's Judaism and Christianity.
Well, even, a common critique of Democrats is that you can't be a pro-life Democrat, but another critique is that you cannot be a pro-choice Republican. I know plenty of Jay, and I know very much coming from Vermont that if you are not pro-choice and you're running in Vermont, like you're not going to win. Planned Parenthood is one of the, if not the largest political donor in the state of Vermont. And so, there was a lot of people who felt like I can't be a conservative or I can't be a Republican unless I can get along with all of these beliefs.
There's no reason why anyone should walk completely in lockstep with any particular dogma. People should not pursue consistency with a community. People should pursue logical consistency within the ideological framework that they have constructed within their own minds. Yeah. That is the only consistency I care about. I don't care about just doing whatever it is other people do. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the freedom of speech. I believe that I have the right to bear arms because I believe that I'm sovereign over my own life. I also believe I'm also pro-choice. That's not really a very popular stance to make, either for people on the left or people on the right. But ultimately, that's what I think is consistent.
So, Bruce, if we, one of the something that's come up a few times and is kind of like an underlying unintentional theme of the topic is, separation of church and state, which we all know that that's not exactly what they meant when they said it and whatever. But what we've seen is as less religious people become involved in government, this new religion has taken over. Right. It's now wokeism. Right. And now that's kind of what the underlying ideology of our current system is.
Yeah. There are a couple issues that come together here. First of all, I want to go back to where you started with all these people complaining about there being a Sikh prayer at the RNC. Those people were voters. Okay. I know that we live in a polarized country, and everybody would like to think all the good people are on my side and all the bad people are on the other side. In fact, that's not true. All the people on my side are people who tend to prefer Republican candidates to Democratic candidates. And all the people on the other side have the other viewpoint. And on both sides, there are plenty of jerks. Okay, there are plenty of truly miserable people.
What?
There are plenty of wonderful people. And what you saw at the RNC was basically a leadership that took an open and welcoming position and a broad position that said, we are a party that respects faith. We don't mandate it. We don't impose it. We respect it. And normally before a benediction, there's an announcement that one is coming, and anybody who wants to leave the room can leave the room. My father was an ordained rabbi. He was a young man, and he was a student. He was a graduate student at Fordham University, which is a Jesuit school, in the 60s. And there were a couple of things they did. One was they opened every class with a prayer. And he asked if he would be permitted to arrive 5 minutes late for all of his classes. He would never tell anybody not to pray. He simply said, I don't feel comfortable in the room. I would like to show up late. On the other hand, also at that point, they had a rule that you couldn't have facial hair. And it was the only time in his adult life that he was clean shaven. So he didn't ask for an exemption on that.
Interesting.
There are people have to find ways, to make accommodations for these things.
Well,
Now,
and doesn't it give credence to the argument that we're just a bunch of Christian nationalists and we don't want anybody? Like,
well,
that's
I'm
my
only half
concern.
qualified.
What do
So,
you mean you're only half qualified?
well, I'm a nationalist. I'm not a very good Christian.
See, nationalist, populist, I'm okay with that. But like,
No, look, it doesn't, there are absolutely people in this country. I mean, first of all, there is, and it's of fairly recent vintage. It's been so strong. There is a very strong anti-Christian movement in this country. Okay, there is an anti-religion movement. There is an anti-Christian movement in this country. There are people out there who cannot open a conversation, no matter what you ask them. I mentioned, we were off camera, that I hosted a high school debate society. And the guy who started this group, it's called Incubate Debate. One of the stories he told me was that, he was at a high school debate. And I forget what the topic was supposed to be. But, the first team started in saying, well, this is an important topic and we'd like to discuss it. But we really can't go there because first we have to talk about how white Christians have destroyed the planet. And the judges said, okay, well, that's a great topic. We'll give you lots of points for that. And the other team said, yeah, you're right. We really should talk about how white Christians. So whatever the debate was supposed to be turned into a let's rag on white Christians.
That's
wow. This is unacceptable. And as you would expect, it promotes a backlash. So you are going to have people who say, look, if we are prohibited from the other room, then we should own this room. Okay, that's always the backlash that you're going to get.
And that's the thing. So now, Jay, you mentioned that you're friends with Harmeet. You've been an RNC committee man for a long time. How are these decisions made? Like how is it decided who gets to pray when? I know you said it's the candidate, it's whatever. But I mean, are you literally hearing people say, because I know I heard people talk about your favorite Republican candidate this session, Vivek Ramaswamy, your best man. I know how much you loved him. He was Hindu, right? And so there was a lot of talk about how he couldn't be the VP because he was Hindu. And brown. So, did you hear conversations like that?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the RNC in general. And John may appreciate this line, but, I've always said that what the definition of a cult is? It's the church down the street you don't belong to.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So even within the RNC itself, there are different groups. In the Christian religion has many different viewpoints, and we talked about that a little, I think, off camera. That Catholics are not evangelicals are not Catherine.
That's right.
Catholic, Lutherans, Methodists, all of those are mainstream Protestants. So the discussions when we talk about invocations, and again, like I said, typically there's 5 sessions of the RNC convention, and each one will have a different person giving an invocation. And because there's 5 sessions, this time there are actually 6 benedictions. So there are 11 different opportunities for 11 different viewpoints and 11 different faiths to bring forth their prayers for the convention. In 2016 in Cleveland, I was chosen because I was an outspoken Catholic and friends with the chairman of the RNC. In 2020, I was chosen because I was a Catholic to do the first meeting so that I could talk about the differences between my beliefs as a Catholic versus Joe Biden's beliefs as
a supposed Catholic.
A self-described devout Catholic. They really look for a wide variety of voices to reach out. And conventions are a made-for-TV event.
Okay.
And what we really want to do is we want to expand the party as much as we can. And one of the ways to do that is to invite religions of different types of religions to be part of that.
Okay, so have there been Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs? I know obviously this is not the first time Harmeet has prayed. But is it just varieties of Christians, or is it?
No, there's been rabbis are regular givers of prayers at the conventions.
Okay.
Muslims, I'm assuming yes, but I'm not sure.
You might not have seen it. Okay.
I might not have seen that.
Because I know one of the things that you and I talked about when I ran for Congress in 2022 was how do we bring new voters onto the Republican side? How do we attract people to conservatism? What are the prayers done just out of habit, or is it like, where does that tradition come from, I guess?
Well, it goes back to our first Congress. There's always been a prayer at the beginning. It's kind of interesting. My family background is a little bit different, a little bit interesting. The first shepherd to come to the United States was Thomas Shepard, who was a Puritan minister in 1636.
Okay.
Who basically was kicked out of England and was looking for a new place to do his fire and brimstone speeches. And it very much was, we're all going to hell.
So you are like descendant from the Pilgrims, in fact, actually.
A little different than the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims are a little bit milder than the Puritans that came over. And we're all going to hell. It's just a matter of when God decides to send us there.
That is terrible.
Because I don't know if that applies to John because, of his beliefs and all of that.
So John, how much of a turnoff is it as a person who's not of faith? Like, how alienating is it to go to meetings where that is a big part of the program conversation?
Honestly, I think that if Republicans want to grow the party, they should focus on practical issues that apply to people, that affect people's day-to-day life, rather than trying to appeal to as many religions as possible, because there's no need to appeal to religions if religion is irrelevant to the topic. Ultimately, politics is about doing what is necessary to benefit our lives, preventing people from infringing upon our freedoms. If anything, I think the purpose of government, the proper purpose of government, is to preserve the liberties of the people. And unfortunately, there are factions in this country who are doing whatever they can to wield political power for the destruction of liberty rather than for its preservation. This is a real problem. This is an emergency that we're in. And so it seems that these religious trappings, if I'm indeed correct, that they get in the way of the next generation of more secular generation of Americans to join the Republican Party, then maybe we should just do away with them and I'm not saying that the Republican Party should just decide to announce religion bad or something. I think that religion's unnecessary. I think it's irrelevant to the topic. According to Pew Research, non-belief in God and God or gods is growing. Only about 50% of younger millennials even report that they're certain that God exists, and about 17% report that they don't believe in God at all.
Okay,
so down to previous generations.
So then, Jay, what I hear him saying is it's a bunch of us old fogies. Bruce, we're old fogies. We need to pass the torch on to the young people. I mean, real talk. If we're talking about how do we bring young people into the fold, if we want to expand the voter base, how do we reach those people? Bruce, I think I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. I want to say, I wanted to, pick up where John left off. As I said that, so I wrote this book about, is wokeism as a religion? It got me very interested in the question of what is a religion. But, if you look at the Constitution, okay, it's clear the Constitution says that we're going to treat religions differently from philosophies or ideologies. But it doesn't tell us where one stops and where the other ends. So if you think about something like an invocation or a benediction at a convention, at a party convention, right? What is it? Well, even if you're in a non-religious environment, you frequently will start something like that with some sort of a ceremony, the Pledge of Allegiance, the Star-Spangled Banner. If you're on the hard left, you might go with a land acknowledgement. I've been in very non-theistic, certainly non-Christian alternative communities in the Bay Area, and people will start things with a moment of gratitude. Okay. What all of these ceremonies have in common is they're basically saying, okay, we're in a room full of people who are going to do something on a topic. Let's pause for a moment and think about something bigger than ourselves.
Mm.
If it's not God, it can be country, whatever it is. And this is not, this is what I'm saying. This is not left. This is not right. This is not traditional religion versus non-traditional religion. It's even, if you look at the 12 steps, it's always, we talk about a power higher than ourselves.
Yep.
Okay. You don't have to have a God or a specific God or a specific notion of God. But I think that there is an important concept of, we are all together here to do something. Let's pause for a moment and think about a bigger cause.
So
and think
almost
about
like,
something bigger than who we are.
yeah, so almost even like a moment of silence, which I know is not exactly
Well,
the same thing, but like,
it's getting, it is getting at the same thing.
yeah.
And it is all, what I say, it's all metaphysics, right? Because a nation, what is a nation? What is it? I mean, these are all, a society, these are all artificial constructs, right? There's me and there's the people I'm standing next to. What makes us a group? What gives us something in common? And it is very, very, and it's been recreated all the time, including in environments that people do not think of as religious. Everybody will tell you, starting with the Pledge of Allegiance, you might like it, you might hate it, but we don't think of it as a religious ceremony. My point is, maybe it is. Okay? Maybe anything that says, think of the people here as comprising a metaphysical unit that is in fact a meaningful unit.
That is an interesting concept.
Yeah, I also want to go back to a little bit of what John said earlier. And the whole design of building a party is not as much adding as many new people as we can. We need to retain the people that we have. So it's always been a fight where we're going to add somebody, but we're going to lose two people as well. And
Yeah.
John talked about how we should focus on our things that affect our everyday life. For people like me, faith and religion is a large part of my everyday life. And if you look at some of the people that have gone to the Republican Party, it is because of that we say God and we do invocations in our conventions where the Democrats don't. And also for me, we go back to the life issue. The life issue is very, very important to me. There is no room for someone who is pro-life in the Democrat Party. Former Governor Bob Casey was taken off the agenda at a convention years ago because he was a pro-life governor. The Republican Party at least allows you that flexibility to be both pro-life and pro-choice. But there has to be enough commitment to the religious values to keep those of us who faith is an important part within the party. And we look back, and I started off by saying that the definition of conservatism for me is an adherence to the Constitution of the United States. And I don't believe it was an accident that the First Amendment talks about religious liberty.
Yeah. So when you say that, if faith wasn't a big part of the Republican Party, it couldn't keep you, would you not vote for Republicans anymore if religion was not a prominent feature in conversations? Well,
there's one thing about being a prominent feature, that it is looked down upon by the other choice that I have. So it doesn't have to be overtly inbuilt about religion. It just has to have more religious understanding than where the Democrats are.
Well, and so to me, so now here's the question, and here, John, I want you to jump in here. This is a great conversation. So to me, a lot of my conservative values actually were solidified after I became a believer. So I spent 30 some odd years basically agnostic, and interestingly enough, to Bruce's point, I'm a sober alcoholic, and what happened was I got sober. I was told I had to find a power greater than myself, and I was like, I don't know what that power is. But in my seeking and my searching, I found Jesus, and now I'm a Christian. And I was pro-choice before, and there was a lot of things that I was for before, because I got a different understanding of the sanctity of human life after I became a believer. And so that really changed for me. But I was always for the Constitution, about guns, and doing all of the things. And so I know plenty of pro-life atheists. I know that sounds shocking, but there are people who are like, nah, bro, it's a human being. And if we're going to protect turtles, we should probably protect humans too, you know? So is it really that the religion makes you a conservative, or is it that, like, do you see what I'm saying?
The way I see it is that I know a lot of religious people who are what I'd say are very virtuous people. And while many of them would attribute their virtue to their religion, I honestly think that they are attempting to use their religion to justify their virtue. Ultimately, I think that being a virtuous person, I think that is something that can be discerned and discovered by reason. That's something that you can realize, well, what kind of life would I want to live? Would I want to live the life of an addict? Would I want to live in a frivolous fashion? Or do I want to live meaningfully? You know, what is this bigger thing greater than myself? You know, in my mind, that is the cause of liberty, or as Thomas Paine called it, the only truly holy war in all of history. Honestly, I think that the values of individual liberty, things like the freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, these things are so fundamental to human dignity that you do not need religion to justify them. If anything, I don't think religion can. My path is actually quite opposite to yours. I was raised religious, and I always believed in this idea that people should be free, and I also believed in Christianity. And it wasn't until it was my reading the Bible that actually convinced me that these two things were not really compatible with each other, at least in my understanding. I'm open to the idea that I could be wrong intellectually, but ultimately I think that if you believe in the sovereignty of the individual over their own life, then you have to embrace certain things like the freedom of conscience, the right of people to think for themselves. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that is not something that is embraced by the extreme Christian nationalist crowd. You know, there's this common question that is raised actually by the Christian nationalists. I've kind of interfaced with these people before because with my activism with Atheists for Liberty, they've crossed paths with us before.
And so hold on, John, really quick, just one quick second. When you say Christian nationalists, are you talking about some of the like crazy like Westboro Baptists?
No, I'm talking about
or like
types. The Groyper types. You know, we're gonna try and
oh no!
How dare Donald Trump not make common cause with Kanye West types, which is just ridiculous. And I'm
okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I'm glad that Trump does not seem to be completely swayed by those types, because otherwise I won't even consider voting for him. The only reason why I am considering voting for him, honestly, is even though is mainly because of a cynical calculus. Because I know that the liberties that I like to enjoy, like being an American, having guns, you know, doing culturally American things, those liberties are not as under threat by the right, at least as of now.
Generally, yeah, but Nick he's one of, isn't that, I mean, those folks are the people that are so far right that they're basically left.
Are we talking about Nick Fuentes here?
Yeah. Nick Fuentes.
Okay, first of all, do not ever call Nick Fuentes a conservative. Nick Fuentes should be in jail. He is a terrorist. He is a hater, and there is no room for him within the Republican Party. Period.
I agree.
And any news source, anyone that uses quotes from Nick Fuentes should be shut down as well, because this is someone who is anti-Semitic, anti-humanist. He is a bad person and should not be involved in political commentary.
Tell me how you really feel, Jay. I feel like you held back a little bit there.
And by the way, I was pleased to see that he refused to endorse Trump. I saw that as a huge coup.
And we're hopeful that Trump doesn't endorse him.
You always have to be careful with that.
Well, and see, this is what I feel like. Here's the thing. I feel like if it was just like Jay doing some prayers, and for the audience, just for, you know, so you guys know, that the religion, the Sikh religion, is basically a cousin of Judaism and Christianity. They believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so whether or not we have all the same beliefs, I mean, they're wasn't she basically still praying to the same God?
Yes, and we had conversations about that. One of the things that happened when people were attacking her on Twitter and other social media. I actually tweeted support of her.
Yeah.
And how important what she was saying and doing was to the party and to the country. And there were many evangelicals that were responding back to my post saying they're not surprised that me being a Catholic and a pagan would support Sikhs. So even within Christianity, there was a lot of backlash coming after,
Wow.
a Catholic for supporting her doing her prayer.
Wow.
I think, I agree with Jay. I mean, I think that it is a rare honor as an American that other people can share their prayers with me.
Yeah.
And I think the question of, is it the same God is not, I just don't see that as relevant. Here's what I see as relevant, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. If you believe that, if you have integrated that into your faith and your denomination, if you found a way to take your denomination and wed it onto that platform, you're an American and you're welcome and you're entitled. But I also wanted to comment on the political dimension of what we were talking about, because we're speaking mostly about the religious. The way that politics is structured in this country right now is the parties really are polarized. This is a conversation I've been having with friends over the past couple of days as the Democrats become increasingly anti-Israel. Okay? One of the problems with a polarized country is that you can't have bipartisan issues. The minute there's an issue that comes up and there is a group that feels vocally about it, one or the other party is going to say there's political advantage in catering to those people. And so what happens eventually is that on any issue, there's a pro-party and there's an anti-party. And now what happens to every individual is you figure out what your high priority issues are. And most people have 2, maybe 3, maybe a half a dozen at most high priority issues. And that determines which party they belong to. And then all of the other issues determine how happy they are with a particular candidate, if they feel pleased with their party, but they know what side they're on. So one of the examples that I like to use in a lot of crowds that I go to is that marijuana legalization is a central issue to many people.
Yeah.
There are people for whom that's the lead issue and they will vote on it.
Yep.
I'm not one of those people. Okay. You cannot gain or lose my vote based on where you stand on marijuana legalization. You might make me happy to back you. You might make me unhappy. But I've gone through my issues and I already know who I'm voting for long before marijuana legalization enters. So if you are standing with me, right? I mean, my 3 big issues, I'm in favor of, economic growth, civil rights and civil liberties, and an American foreign policy that recognizes is willing to confront our enemies. Okay. You're with me on those. You could have the stupidest damn position I've ever heard on marijuana. I don't care. You're not losing my vote for it. And that's how most people are. They're just not as upfront and honest about it.
It is, but there's also, we have to remember, because it is easy. I will confess, it's easy for me to get stuck in my bubble, right? Because I'm around a lot of religious people. I'm around a lot of terminally online people. And so we know about this stuff, but the majority of Americans, 70% of America or something like that is politically independent, ideologically independent. They don't consider themselves one way or another. They're going to vote for somebody. And that could be the difference, right? If I'm a Republican or I'm a conservative or libertarian, and I make my whole campaign about, the stuff that people like us care about, and not the stuff that people like the regular normal Americans who are like, you know what, my life sucks and I just want to smoke some weed. That is literally like, I mean, can I say it? Like, the voting demographic is not having these kind of deep conversations on a regular basis. Can we just admit that that's what's so?
Ultimately, a party that does not seek to liberalize something that a significant portion of the voting population wants to enjoy is shooting itself in the foot. Ultimately, people should have I think people are sovereign over their own minds. They're sovereign over their own bodies. If they want to be somewhat frivolous with the way in which they use it, that is their choice. You do not discover reason and virtue by having someone force it on you. You cannot force someone to be rational any more than you can force someone to be moral.
Well,
These are
and
things that people discover for themselves. So let people fail and discover the pain of failure, so that then they can either choose to do what's right, what's beneficial to their long-term well-being for themselves, rather than trying to push people towards that. And that's my big problem that I have with the American political left. Is it's very much a nanny state, paternalistic. Oh, we'll make your decisions for you. You're too stupid to make your own decisions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I still think there's a little bit of that on the right. I think there's significant portions on the right that still are against drug legalization. And
so so Jay, for an example, I got a bunch of crap for being pro marijuana legalization as a Republican candidate. But it's one of those things where I'm like Bruce said, this is just so low on my priority, and everybody smokes weed. Like, I just don't care. And I'm a person who's in recovery from substance abuse, and I still feel that way. Is there a non-religious, non-moral argument to things like marijuana?
Well, I think how it works is that as a conservative, and you look at conservative issues, like in a primary, if you and the candidate you are running against are the same on the life issue, same on the economic issues, same on, how you feel about potholes, the differentiator is marijuana. So it may be the 8th issue on the list for me, but it is the differentiation between the two candidates.
Okay.
So it is all these issues are important, but there's a priority of it.
Right.
For instance,
but if it was between me and, right. So this was an obvious choice, right? If it's between a pro-life Republican who thinks that weed is fine versus a abortion up to the point of birth Democrat who hates you and wants to take your guns, you're still probably going to vote for the Republican who has some beliefs you don't like.
Well, let me make it even clearer for you. I have been known as Jay the Republican for a number of years.
Yeah.
I start every Republican meeting saying, "Hi, I'm Jay and I'm a Republican." If a pro-choice Republican was running against a pro-life Democrat, I would vote for the pro-life Democrat.
Interesting. So even if the pro-choice Republican wanted freer markets, he wanted to let people continue bearing arms and did what he could to end the assault on lawful gun owners, and pretty much he was right with you on almost every single issue, maximizing individual liberty. On the disagreement on pro-choice, that would be your...
Yes, because quite simply for me, and I want to expand on that a little bit as well after I'm done. To me, that if you do not believe the life of a child is important, nothing else is important after that. And it's either a baby or it's not. And if you believe it's okay to take the life of a child, I cannot trust you on any other issue going forward.
That definitely depends on your definition of what a person is, what a child is. I mean, it definitely would seem absurd that someone is suddenly bestowed personhood just the day before they're born and then the day after they're born.
So this isn't meant to be a conversation about abortion.
No. This is exactly my point. Okay, what Jay said is he's got a priority, and here's what he believes.
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't matter whether what Jay believes makes sense to John. Okay.
Correct.
This is what determines how Jay will vote. And that's my point.
And that
Okay?
everybody
He's got-
has
he's
like a
got this
single
view.
issue, like a main.
We've got a small number, but basically what Jay just said was, this is his litmus test. This is his differentiator. Why is he a Republican? Because when it comes to the parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have polarized views on abortion. Now, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are collections of tens of millions of people. That means that within those polarized extremes, there are tens of millions of different opinions. And if it happens that the Republican Party in a particular race puts forward one of its minority of people who have a viewpoint that Jay and voters who think like him deem offensive, and the Democrats happen to match it with one of their minority who's got the position with which he agrees, then that's the way it's going to go. Now, you might say, why are these people Republican, Democrat? And the answer is likely because neither one of them are abortion voters. Okay. You may have a guy who says, I'm a Republican because I believe in small government and I believe in low taxes. And yeah, I also happen to be pro-choice, but what the hell? I'm just a little bit unhappy with my party about that. And you get a Democrat who says, who's got the opposite viewpoint. Okay.
Yep.
And so now these people come up, and neither one of them, it's a reasonably good bet that if you're going to have that race going on between a pro-life Democrat and a pro-choice Republican, you're probably in a jurisdiction where this is not the major issue.
Well, and I think we may have actually hit really the sensitive topic that kind of underlines or undergirds all of these conversations, right? When we're talking about a lot of these topics, it does speak directly to our ideological beliefs, the foundations that we live our lives off of. And so people are going to be even more emboldened, are going to be even more impassioned about these conversations, because if like, for example, if you're a pro-life voter and that is your number one priority, right? Everything else sort of falls in line after that. And that comes from, I would assume that comes from your faith, that is like your faith really does drive a lot of what undergirds your beliefs. And I think that is actually the same, whether we're talking about Jay as a Catholic, John as a rationalist. I don't think that's the right word to use. But
it's all about the first principles. What first principles you embrace will percolate into your ethics and then into your politics.
Okay, so say more about that, first principles. I've heard that expression before.
So the first principle I'm operating off of is that a person is sovereign over their own self, their own being. And as such, because they're sovereign over themselves, they should be free. They should be free to act in a fashion that does not violate the sovereignty of another.
Okay.
Yes. So that first principle, I mean, that has, evident implications with regards to ethics and politics.
Right. But basically what first principle is whatever is your personal undergirding, like underlying belief.
Yes. Now, I would wager that, sorry, I forgot your name already.
Jay.
Bruce?
Jay,
Yes.
Bruce?
Jay. Jay is the Catholic, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I would wager that Jay's first principle is essentially that we're made in the image of God, and essentially that the fetus in the womb, or the embryo in the womb, has an immortal soul, and because of this, and because of the command by God not to murder, that we should preserve the life of the unborn. And I'm certainly sympathetic to the conclusion, not necessarily to the first principle, but I'm certainly sympathetic to the conclusion when it comes to late term and partial birth abortions, because clearly there's no significant difference between a late term fetus and a just born infant. Where it kind of loses me is when it comes to embryos. I don't see how a zygote could be a person, but that's because I believe personhood exists in a functioning brain, and you don't have a functioning brain until at least at the end of the first trimester.
And this actually, what John just said is another illustration of what I was going for, because that is the counterpart. That if you look at an issue like abortion, it turns out that most of the people who feel passionately about it believe either that all abortions should be banned because they're all murder, or that all abortion should be allowed up to the moment of live birth because it's just a clump of cells. But in fact, poll after poll after poll after poll shows that the overwhelming majority of Americans reject both of those positions. Okay? Which is why you end up with debates about things like a heartbeat bill at 6 weeks or 15 weeks or a first trimester or all of these things. The overwhelming majority of Americans who do not see, the overwhelming majority of Americans who do not elevate the abortion issue do not share either the strong form of pro-life or the strong form of pro-choice. Right. And that, that is the counterpart to the phenomenon that I was showing, which is basically you have two groups of people who are passionate about polar opposite and extreme positions. And so it is completely unsurprising that the two political parties would say, great, we'll each grab onto one of those groups. Yeah. And now the majority of people who fall into neither of those groups are kind of disappointed with some of the rhetoric coming out of the leadership of their parties, because, the overwhelming majority of Americans are going, you know what? I am completely uncomfortable with these 9th month abortions, but I got no problems with a morning after pill. And now you're telling me I got to choose between which one I'm okay with, because the voices that are loudest in my party has taken one of those positions.
Well, and I think it's I think you nailed it there, Bruce. That really does seem to be the underlying difference between the two parties right now. And so, how do we then, especially as I'll say as a religious person, how do we as religious people make sure not to exclude or alienate the not religious people? How like, is it really further to the point, actually, maybe is it appropriate for the question of life to be basically the only defining difference between the parties, or the main underlying difference between the parties?
It really isn't the defining difference. There are a lot of issues because there are so many people that have different passion points in different places where they are. So everybody has a different defining issue. And that's what Bruce is saying, that, for me, it's the life issue. For John, it's the economic issues, perhaps, but I want to address the economic issues in a broader sense, and see if it brings us back to the religious liberty thing that makes America great, in my mind.
Yes.
We argue over capitalism versus socialism and communism. And what are the differences? And to me, capitalism and socialism / communism are both economic vehicles. And I think the challenges are here that we always try to talk about one type of government, one type of economy based on economic issues. And why communism and capitalism both are so flawed is that we are not, in my mind, economic animals. We are spiritual animals. And what makes America different in its belief in capitalism is the fact that you are allowed to be a spiritual animal here openly if you so desire. Where in a communist situation, you're always considered to be an economic piece of the pie. You are not a spiritual animal as much as you are controlled by the economics of what your system of government is. So religious liberty, in acknowledging that we're spiritual animals, allows both myself and John and Bruce and Ericka to live in a society next to each other, because we can choose how far we go on that spiritual realm, and whether we're full spiritual animals or I challenge John, and we'll have some conversation on this differently, but I believe that atheists are also spiritual, but not to a God.
Depends on what you mean by spiritual.
Exactly.
It's all about definitions, right?
Yes. So hold on, John. On that note, We have come all the way around the hour, and we might have to come back and have a conversation debate on religion and or non-religion. I think that would be a fun conversation. So you guys, we thank you for watching the channel today. If you have been blessed by the content, we ask that you like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, vote Republican. But in all seriousness, you guys, because we are capitalists here at Generally Irritable, we're going to close with a commercial from one of our sponsors. And since we talked about marijuana legalization, we're going to hear from Big Dan's Hemp Emporium. Use code Generally Irritable to get a generous discount, 25% off. Hey guys, Generally Irritable, excited to announce a new partnership with Big Dan's Hemporium out in Leander. They are a locally owned and operated CBD and hemp store. They've got all your usual products. You've got stuff for your pets. You've got tinctures and gummies and flour and vape and the whole bit. My personal favorite product that they have is this roll-on. You guys, I actually didn't used to think that CBD and hemp products worked. I had tried things here and there, and I never got the desired effect. Whatever it was you were supposed to have out of the product never actually happened. Well, we met Dan at his trailer down on West 6th here in Austin and decided to give it a shot. I've got tennis elbow, you guys. I've got really bad joint pain in my elbow, and I've actually been using this for about a month now, and it feels a lot better. I put it on a couple times a day, and it seems to be helping with the inflammation. Again, it's just less painful. I can't guarantee that this is going to help you. I'm not making any medical claims, but I am saying it has helped me. I have a hard time sleeping a lot of nights, and so I've tried their gummies to sleep, and I can tell you that it's better than a lot of the melatonin and other products that I've taken that often just leave me feeling groggy in the morning. So not sure if it'll work for you guys, but I want you to give it a shot. So go to BigDansHemporium.com. Okay, I want to make sure I get the website right. BigDansHemporium.com. It's BigDansHemporium.com, and use code Generally Irritable. That'll get you 25% off every single purchase, not just your first purchase, but every single purchase. Use Generally Irritable, get 25% off. I'll also include the referral link in the description below.
You should sell pillows.